And we're going.
We're live?
Yes.
Alright, hello, brave listeners who have tuned into our second episode of our absolute clusterfuck. Barely structured bullshit, episode 2. Keeping with our name, we're skipping ahead from our last episode, all around the timeline, with another episode of Clusterfuck. With me is Hab. Say hello.
Hi, I also respond to hey bitch or hey who. And
Hey
I
here,
am the
hey ho.
person who has to record all of this.
And make the wondrous images that you see before you.
I don't think it's
Today,
wondrous, I think it's a fucking
uh,
fever dream.
it is. Today, with us, we have the man, the legend, living in a Gmod RP server with no moderation, Gunny.
Hello. Yes, I do live in Florida.
What are your credentials, Gunny? Is it just as bad as ours?
History-wise, yes, it is just as bad as yours, though if it comes to certain eras of history, I do end up picking up a lot of information. I do study the Meiji Restoration era for Japan. That is mostly because a lot of
Fucking weeaboo.
martial arts do get their start around there.
Weeaboo.
In case we talk about the history of
American
Czech people
Restoration of Japan in the 50s.
in the Meiji Restoration era Japan, we are going to use Gunny's knowledge, but...
Yeah, well, a little bit of post-revolution Russia as well.
Uh-huh.
So because
you are
it's really heavily entwined.
You are partially qualified onto this topic, and then once again, I am the only person that actually knows most of this stuff. But unfortunately, because it was
the bureaucrat and martial artist to come on.
Okay, and we didn't tell Gunny what this episode was on, but we kind of spoiled it with the text. So, Gunny, how much do you know about World War One?
World War One in general, I know quite a bit.
Yeah,
Don't know the obscure stuff, but when it comes to information, yes, I know quite a bit.
For our listeners outside of Europe and living in third world countries such as North America, we'd like to introduce you to the concept of Europe. Europe, for centuries and millennia, has always been this sort of mess of political power struggles and status quo, which sort of had to collapse at one point. I mean, some of you might know about the French Revolution or, the subsequent Napoleonic Wars. But a little thing happened with this ruler of one of the major powers. Wait, was he? What? The Duke. Yeah, he was a Duke. He wasn't the king. He wasn't the ruler of Austria-Hungary. Hap, correct me. I'm speaking from the top of my ass over here.
Austria-Hungary, yes. I cannot believe I left this part to you.
Okay, and said Duke, or I think he was heir to the throne, actually.
He was the Archduke.
Yeah, he was the heir to the throne. He got shot. Which I guess a lot of you Americans know about.
It started absolutely nothing, by the way. Nothing happened after that.
Nothing happened. There is nothing that stemmed from the fact that they just capped this man. Something did come from it, which is by extension the sort of concept of European republics, where these big monarchies after the war, they broke off and broke up because there really wasn't a reason to hold them together anymore, or anything to hold them together anymore. And so what you ended up with was Europe fracturing. Now we're skipping ahead slightly. But this war also gave existence to what we might consider a modern, independent Czech nation. A Czech nation that, once again, we have a running theme over here. You can blame the Czechs on everything. Not only were we anti-communist before it was cool, we did military interventionism before it was cool, and no step on snack before it was cool. Do not fret on me before it was cool. Alright, a bit of background over here. Czech Republic is Slavic, right?
Yeah, just kind of barely though.
Yeah, okay. Back then, there was this much more of a national sort of feeling about the sort of Slavic people of Europe. Like, they were considered, people back then, like of Slavic ethnicity, considered themselves as brothers. Right?
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, okay. Even though one of the themes of Czech history is brother murder, or is it fratricide?
Yeah, it's fratricide.
Yeah, fratricide.
Is it fratricide?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so even though one of the sort of national themes was fratricide, and we're gonna get into that sometime, maybe in like the next 8 months when we do a third episode, but what happened there was that the Czechs really didn't want to fight other Slavs because they were brothers. And they couldn't not get conscripted because the draft dodging in the sort of level that happened in the Americas during the Vietnam War wasn't really a thing. Like, if you were draft dodging in back those times, you pretty much would have gotten fucking smacked back to hell.
There's a giant
I need a
fucking
brief.
war going on in Europe.
Yeah, there's a
So-
giant war going on in Europe. Like, it was
You
literally
leave
called.
the war comes to you.
Yeah, it was literally called the war to end all wars.
And as we all know,
That aged badly.
not a single war happened after that.
Man, it is. I'd say like Agent Orange babies aged better than that statement.
Jesus fuck. Oh, I'm
Damn,
going to hell for
weird
laughing at that.
concept.
Okay,
I'm let's just not bring up the 30 million different genocides that happened during this period.
I mean,
We're probably gonna
there's-
get to one of them sooner or later, maybe.
no.
Maybe, but what we did as Czechs and many Czech soldiers, what they did was they surrendered, they capitulated to the enemy, and that meant that they got prisoner of war status, and they didn't need to fight in the war anymore. Right? You know,
Well,
they
depends on which side.
we were a part of Austria-Hungary, so
Okay.
yeah, and others defected or straight up before getting conscripted left the Czech land, left Austria-Hungary at that point, and joined up with either the French or the Russians, back then still Imperial Russia, and fought on their side. Now, this sort of created a large influx of people in those lands. Like, you know about the French Foreign Legion, you know?
Yeah.
What we had were the Czechoslovakian legions, which were sort of created from this. And from what I recall, they operated on the both fronts, both on east and west. But their most known exploits are in the Russian Revolution. Now, Hab, can you tell us what was the Russian Revolution?
Oh, excellent. Now, one very entertaining way, and this is a side note, one very entertaining way to learn about the Russian Revolution is to listen to the Revolutions podcast by Mike Duncan, because he's been doing the Russian
We
Revolution.
aren't sponsored. We just
We
like
aren't sponsored.
podcasts.
I just really like it. It's week by week, and he's been doing it for 2 years so far. And as of November, he's finally gotten to the actual revolution in 1918. But what this essentially was a very long, slow burn conflict against the imperial authority, and in the end, mainly against Tsar Nicholas II, who was I'm gonna quote an unknown source, a fucking idiot. But what that essentially ended up in was the Tsar, Nicholas II, being deposed and having a completely different type of government being instated, with Alexander Kerensky at the lead. However, that government did not last too long either, mainly because Kerensky was, again, quote from an unknown person, a fucking idiot, and that sparked a conflict between the Bolsheviks and, well, basically literally the rest of Russia. Now, what that ended up in was Russia essentially almost pulling out of the entire war, and that was essentially the part of the Bolsheviks, is that they just literally wanted to quit the war to like focus on their own situation in Russia. But that's also where the legions come in.
Now,
do you agree that these conflicts never actually amounted to anything?
They
There's
didn't
not,
amount
like-
to anything. There certainly wasn't a superpower that lasted for around 70 years.
and
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
we certainly do not feel the impacts of this to this day.
Yeah,
To this
definitely
very
not
day, like,
proxy
nah,
fighter
man.
groups that are still running around in certain areas of Asia and Africa.
Yeah,
But,
there is nothing
funny thing
happening in
is,
Afghanistan. Absolutely nothing.
and nothing happened in Chaban Square in 1989. Moving on, what you can blame the Russian Revolution on is sort of Germans. Because Germans exported communism into Russia. Because communist theory states that the communist or the proletariat revolution should start in an industrialized country. You know, where the workers are sick of their oppressors. And I'm doing air
That
quotes
plan
in
didn't
front of
work
my
And
out.
they're
mic.
absolutely horrific work conditions.
And gentlemen, can you tell me one thing that Russia is definitely not?
A country.
It's definitely not communist.
It's definitely
Both
not
of you
communist.
try again.
I am really scraping the bottom of my brainstem over here. Is it that Russia is not heavily industrialized?
Yes! Yes, it's not! What they did was export, I think they literally shipped Marx into Russia?
Not Marx, Christ, he was already
Either
dead. They
Marx
shipped
or
Lenin.
Lenin. They shipped Lenin into Russia. So that's a, first of the podcast that we blame something on the Germans and not on the Czechs. But this revolution was a clusterfuck. It was an unmitigated clusterfuck. Russia, as you might know, is big.
It is really
Right?
big in
And
conversion
there
to
was
kilometers
never
squared.
and there was never a genocide about the indigenous peoples of southern
No,
Asiatic Russia.
absolutely
Nope,
nothing happened
never
there.
one. Yeah,
One
nothing.
of the really big
nothing there.
reasons that Russia is so huge as it is now was mainly due to Peter the Great and the other Tsars and emperors that followed him. Because thanks to Peter the
Yeah.
Great and the others, they have expanded to basically Alaska, which they then sold to the Americans in the 19th century.
Or petty change.
Totally not a giant problem with a lot of cultures inhabiting the same area. An area that
I
possibly
mean, why would you
got
care?
possibly got overrun with the White Russian forces.
I'm not sure we're gonna get into the White Army because that's a little bit out of scope of this episode. But we're moving to the Legionaries. And Okay, let's paint a picture here. The revolution is going on. The White Army is fighting against the Red Army. And the Legionnaires are stuck in the middle. They can't go home because between them and home is the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the still active war at that point. So their other options include either capitulating to the Russians, the Reds, or leaving Russia the long way around through Vladivostok and writing something called the Trans-Siberian Magistral.
Oh no.
It gets worse. Now,
Oh, don't tell me that.
it gets so much worse, man. You have no idea. It gets so ridiculous. Now,
And
as
just
we
to
have
be
established,
clear, just to be clear, these are the Czech fighters that, after the country capitulated to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they're like, screw that, we're going to Russia to keep fighting you guys, and then the revolution kicks off, and they're like, shit, we gotta leave.
it's more so that the Czechs who joined didn't want to fight other Slavs. And back then, the peoples always saw the Austro-Hungarian regime as sort of the impressive imperialistic power that it was. Let's be honest, it was a fucking empire.
Oh,
And they didn't want to fight their brothers and sisters in sort of... I guess it's sort of a racial point of view. Ethnic is the better word. They didn't want
ethnic's
to
a better
fight
word.
their ethnic siblings. So they decided to join them on the side of the Russians or on the side of the French to fight the evil Austrians. Now, these people, both of Czech, Slovak, Polish, and I think... I definitely know there were Czechs, Slovaks, and maybe some Poles, but it was like a minor sort of part. They now were stuck in the middle, inside of a country that is literally falling apart in the most violent revolution known to man. A revolution maybe superseded by the French Revolution. And they're stuck in the middle, and they can't go that way. They have to go the long way around the entire fucking planet. They're like half of the world. They have to go around half of the world to get back home. So their plan was, we're gonna, move west. Yeah, west? No. Fuck,
East.
how does...
East. Never
We're
eat
going to
seaweed.
We are going to move to the other side of Russia. And the plan was to use the Trans-Siberian Magistral. The Magistral is a long-ass fucking train track going through the middle of Russia, just like skewering it like a giant spear. That said spear is essentially the only thing to this day, besides like maybe military airplanes, that connects some parts of the Russian or Siberian wasteland together. Because there is nothing there.
There are only beans and sadness in Siberia.
And
yeah,
gulags.
For anyone who's listening and is totally not familiar with the Russian landscape at all, like as you do, Siberia is, holy hell, oppressive to any life.
It's like, this is the place where one of the worst totalitarian regimes in history of man decided to build their camps to detain people. There is nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. There's barely any fucking trees out there. It's just
this is why
permanently frozen land, snow, and a lot of depression, which might be a part of why all
native cultures south of it are nomads. It's still tundra to the south.
Yeah, it's there's nothing there, and most of the places that exist in Russia is like pieces of civilization out in Siberia exist along the Trans-Siberian Magistral. This makes it a sort of a central transportation node for the entirety of the state at that time. Because at that time, aeroplanes were just getting started. There was no way you're going to load all of these people onto a boat. There is no way you're going to load on, now listen to this, 3 divisions of men. The Czechoslovakian national legions, by 7th January of the year 1919, were 3 divisions of men.
God damn.
Now, we're going to put this into perspective. There were 12 platoons of gunners, 2 platoons of riders, and a few artillery batteries. There was a lot of people in this. There was a lot of people.
Are they taking machinery with them? Because that's a lot of firepower moving, and that's a lot of heavy load that you have to move.
A lot of the stuff that these legionaries had was usually all the gear they took from their own army or the Russians.
This is where we get into it. Okay, people at the time who were in charge of the Communist Party realized that this is a massive pooling of firepower and manpower of a potentially hostile party on their land, on their sovereign land. And they realized this isn't a good thing. Now, they were still way out in the west. They didn't start their trail home at that time. Okay? Now, this sort of culminated in a part of a massive fuck-up where the Legionaries at that point located in today's Ukraine, they wanted to leave. You know, they wanted to leave in the year 1917. The part of the 1st Division, the 2nd Platoon, managed to take, without any fighting, the city of Kiev, which is, I think, the capital of modern-day Ukraine.
It is.
Yes, it is.
It is.
It has been a very, very defensive city, with everyone trying to take Ukraine.
Yes, and this puts into perspective how massive of a gathering of force this was. This is a lot of people with a lot of guns, a lot of experience, and a lot of resources, willing to fight for their way home. So the communists realized that, oh shit, we can't smash this. We barely manage, to keep the White Army at bay. What the fuck are we gonna do? So they decided to agitate. Okay. They decided to spread the idea of communism to these soldiers so they would join the Red Army. Now, their plan was for their agitations to bring them around 15,000 men. Take a guess how many they managed to get.
Oh, I don't know. 5?
I want to say 150.
You're cheating.
I am not cheating. That was a genuine guess, by the way.
It is around 150 men.
Oh, that's more than I thought.
Now, it gets better. It gets better.
We're talking about World War One.
Yeah, we're still in World War One territory. We're in 1918-ish.
Yeah, it's just slowing down.
It's just slowing down, and the Russians have already mostly pulled out. But in the beginning of the year 1918, Trotsky definitely decided on his solution to the legionary question. It goes bad when I say the question of X.
Oh yeah, no. Just keep in mind, this will become a theme later on to anyone listening now for future episodes. If we are in 1880 to 1940 in Europe and the X question is mentioned, either
It's
a
bad.
massive fuck up is going to happen or a genocide is going to happen, either
Now,
intentionally or unintentionally.
Trotsky decided that the legionaries that aren't in Vladivostok yet wouldn't be allowed to leave Russia, and they would be dispersed by force. Soldiers, would be accepted, would be integrated into the Red Army, and the disobedient rest would be working in industry.
Read Gulag?
Probably.
The predecessor.
Probably. Now, this increased tensions very much.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
literally gave out an order to these men that they would be dispersed by force.
Yeah, when you have a neutral party that has guns, the best thing to tell them is, "Oh
We're
yeah,
gonna fuck you up.
submit or die." Wait,
Submit
we
or
were just
die.
trying to leave. Submit or die. We're just trying
Yeah,
to leave. Submit or die.
Now, there was also a bit of a mess with the sort of the leadership of the Legionnaires not being sort of in tune with what their men wanted. They wanted to leave. They wanted to go home. Like, the war is ending. Like, this kerfuffle is gonna go down, and we're gonna have our own independent Czech state. All of these people were deeply nationalist in the sense that they wanted their own nation, their own sovereignty, and they were fiercely independent. And those that didn't just wanted to go home. I don't want to live in the fucking Siberian wastelands. Nobody does,
I hear it's the nicest time of year.
Yeah, it's
In the middle
never
of
nice.
fucking fall and winter.
It's never nice.
There is a reason it's
Now.
called permafrost.
Now, what happened was that the men of the Legion said they're representatives of the soldiers of the Legion, because at this point, this is 3 divisions of men. This is like a considerable gathering of force by back then standards, and an absolute ridiculous gathering by today's standards. It's like almost an army. Now, these representatives of the soldiers of the Czechoslovakian legions decided that they are not going to listen to orders of their superiors if they would be in they wouldn't want to go and leave. So
Would
those
you say that the soldiers unionized into communists?
Oh, not there! No! No! Now, this gets better. Late in May 9th, May 10th, 20th, 1918, Trotsky ordered the leader of the legions to be arrested, and that he would send out a telegram telling the legionnaires to surrender. Now, the response to this order from the man who's been arrested by Trotsky, or his... Wait, let me get this straight.
You've got
They
two
arrested
attempts.
the leader of the legions, one of the leaders of the legions, and they told him to tell his men by telegram to lay down their arms and surrender. Right?
Right, that's
Now.
where we are so far.
Now, the response to this was essentially, fuck around, find out, come and take it. The response to this was they are no longer listening to their previous chain of command. They are no longer listening to their military leaders, and they will leave Russia on their own terms. They promised not to intervene with the Red Army. They're gonna cooperate with the Bolsheviks about their leave out of Vladivostok. And, reasonable. Let us be. We're gonna leave. We're not gonna oppose you, but fuck around and find out. Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, what Trotsky did... what Trotsky did was he ordered either dispersion or annihilation. You know what this means, do you?
Well, he just pressed the fuck around button.
He pressed the fuck around button. He pressed the fuck around button that had, and I'm going to remind you again, 3 divisions of men behind it. He pressed the fuck around button. And so the Legionnaires began to fight the Red Army. And if you think this is starting to get into a clusterfuck, we're just getting started. We're just getting started, like, holy shit. Like, if we're going to get into this, on 25th of May, which is around 5 days later, Bolsheviks decided to attack a Czechoslovakian train in Omsk, and at night, the Legionnaires began their counterattack. And the Legionnaires were unarmed a lot of the times. So what they did... They attacked the Soviet barracks, or the Bolshevik barracks at that point, and they raided their arms storages. So now imagine the image of a Czech, running straight at a sort of Russian barrack, just like a division of Czechs, just like a swarm of fucking locusts running at them, and just raiding all of their weapon and ammo stockpiles, taking whatever isn't nailed down, and what is nailed down, taking it with the nails and whatever it was nailed down to, and then just leaving.
Yeah, remember, if you get in these guys' way, a lot of them are unarmed, so they probably have, like, sticks and clubs.
Now,
if not,
now you would imagine that the Legionnaires didn't specifically target Bolshevik Soviets, but those guys usually ran away.
Well, yeah, because a lot of them were conscripted.
Conscripted, demoralized, and you imagine being a conscript, and you just see this, probably, beer-drunk guy from, Czech Republic screaming profanities at you and just running at you. You're not gonna fuck around and find out. You're not gonna stick around.
Yeah, you didn't sign up for this.
You were signed up for this, but you didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, you got signed up.
No. They used this gear and weapons to, defend their advance along the Trans-Siberian Magistral. Now, what happened was, fights began. Really tough fights with Germans, and Hab is gonna help with me. Hungarians? No. Magyar.
Yes, Hungarians.
Yeah, oh god, I landed at fucking European. Yeah, so tough fights started with Germans and Hungarians, which, funnily enough, made up most of the Red Army.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Now, those Germans and Hungarians and Czechoslovakian Bolsheviks.
You mean
that
all
fought...
of the 150 people?
Yeah, all of the 150 people. They got all of them, man. Now, what happened? Those that they usually executed them. these people that fought against the Czech legionnaires, the Germans or the Hungarians or the Czechoslovakian Bolsheviks, were executed. Now, those that gave up without fighting were held in prison until the legions left from wherever they were, because they were advancing along the Trans-Siberian Magistral, and then they were released. Now, you might realize that I said executed.
Yeah.
You know what that is?
Yes.
A war crime.
Yeah. We're already in war crime territory. Executing
Yeah,
prisoners of
boy.
war.
Now, the article I'm going off of is Wikipedia, and it mentions the Geneva Conventions. And I'm trying to think, or I'm trying to realize, or I think that the Geneva Conventions are a post-World War II thing.
Yes, they are.
So,
Though
in theory,
after World War One, you do have a lot of laws of war being put into writing. So at this time, because remember, the League of Nations also arises.
oh god, the somehow much more incompetent predecessor of the UN. Yeah, but
yeah, so the idea starts
in
around here.
theory, at the time, it wasn't a war crime, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it wasn't illegal, but if you were found out
But
about doing it,
now, considering we are talking about this, it was probably found out about. But by May of the year 1918, the Legionnaires had so many battles against the
holy shit, the war
Bolshevik
hasn't ended
forces.
yet. This is May. The war hasn't ended yet. We still
Yeah,
got a
it
couple months
hasn't
to go.
ended yet. It's not a war crime. So, what they did, or this was a reaction about the enemy doing this first. So, this is the kids pointing fingers at each other. He shot first. He did it first. So, I'm going to do it as well. Now, what we talked about previously about the Legionnaires being requested, or rather forced at gunpoint to surrender and lay down their arms, was referred to as the Chelyabinsk incident. Now, there was a lot of like minor skirmishes going on between the Legionnaires and the Red Army. Right?
Right.
Only a few, definitely.
Just a few. It's not like you're advancing down the heart of Siberia.
Russia.
It's not like we're playing
yeah.
on hard mode.
Taking villages to house prisoners. So you are like taking cities and villages that are situated on the heart of Russia and Siberia of the time. Nothing like that.
Now, this might be a bit of a strong word to say that they took them. It's more to say as in they borrowed them for a time. They sort of build up infrastructure, because now you might think that this is like I don't think I'm getting across the sheer scale of this movement across Siberia. This is like the biggest human road trip in history since fucking Genghis Khan.
Yeah, no, this is a massive fucking army just showing up on your
Just showing up!
doorstep.
Legions on tour.
Not on your
Probably don't
doorstep.
even-
Not
you don't-
even
probably don't
on
even
your
speak Russian at
doorstep.
this point.
Inside of your fucking living room.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I wonder what's happening at the train station. You're probably a peasant that lives in Siberia, maybe nomadic, from
Yeah.
the nomadic peoples down south. You probably don't even speak Russian at this point, and all of a sudden you see the train coming. Okay, the railway's coming. Let's see what's coming into town. And then all of a sudden, this army of people that don't even speak the common language with you.
Czech and Russian is sort of similar enough, and a lot of people spoke Russian back then. And Czech, being the clusterfuck that it was a lot closer to Russian than it is now. But funny you mention a train. And I'm going to I had this joke lined up, and I don't have a better segue to this. They didn't call each other Legionnaire.
Oh my god,
Right?
are they hobos?
No.
Are they warriors of the rail?
They were literally calling each other brother.
They're the
One
brothers of the
soldier
rail?
in the Legion was called a brother. And you might say that this was a band of brothers.
God, damn it. Also, they're the Brotherhood of the Rail. These guys are literally hobos.
Nah, it gets better. Hobos didn't put on a fucking armored train on the tracks. Now,
Oh god, we're down to armored
we're down to the armored train, baby. The armored train that is most known from this period was called Orlik. It was an improvised armored train that was built in a place called Penza in the May 29th, 1918. Now, listen to the armament. At first, it was armed with 11 machine guns and 1 cannon. Now, it gets better. What they did, they took armored cars and put them on flatbed, carriages.
Yeah, just to up its firepower.
They just put a car with a gun. They put a fucking Toyota Hilux Technical on the fucking flatbed and drove this shit across Siberia. they fucking Toyota Hilux with like a fucking Dushka just sitting on a flatbed with like a steam locomotive in the front, and that is quite literally what this was.
I mean, at this point, we found out that that's a bad idea because of a certain British guy.
Now,
in
it
the desert.
gets better.
Yeah, but you can't stop this thing because it's literally the lifeblood in your country.
Who says they have to
It
stop?
gets better. It gets better, Gunny, because what the Legionnaires did, the 1st and 4th Czechoslovakian platoon also stole another train called Převý Leninský Brněno pojezd, which might be translated loosely to something like Lenin's armored train or armored vehicle.
Isn't that a big fuck off one?
Now, what they had was this train was made up of modern armored trains or armored vehicles made up of an armored engine. Now, the mention of the engine being armored probably means that the engine that they used previously wasn't armored.
Yeah.
So just imagine Wild West and this age and they just in Russia. Imagine just like a fucking Wild West locomotive going along like a fucking pillbox with 11 machine gun barrels sticking out of it, just like sandbags, and like 1 cannon haphazardly is somewhere on a flatbed, and then 2 armored cars on more flatbeds with just like
because this thing is
Czech screaming in the background.
Yeah, this is essentially a civilian train that just gets a cannon put on it, a couple machine guns put on it, and then gets taken over by
a bunch of insane Czechs. Yeah,
a band of brothers, for lack of a better word.
It gets even better.
Yeah, it's a transport train on the lifeblood railway, so you can't just like blow up the railway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they take over one of the most, at the time, cutting edge armored artillery trains.
And they just steal it and hook it up to this Franken train. And they steal it with the nails. They steal it with the nails that it was nailed down to. And if they steal it with the post that you nailed it down to, and they, just for a good measure, they dig the post out of the ground as well, so they steal a bit of dirt around it. Now, The most known configuration of this armored of this technical. It's like a railway technical.
Well, the thing is, you're also like stealing parts off of other armored trains. So this is a technical train with technicals on it.
Yes. Now, what they did was move the locomotive almost into the middle of the armored train. So the cannon cars, and it sounds so stupid to say, but that's what it was. It was a railway car with a fucking cannon. And why they put the locomotive in the middle was to minimize obstructions to the sort of angles of fire, because they were getting shot at. Now, as for the crew, this is great, and this is why I fucking love like olden Czech military history, because the names were on point. The crew was made up at start by 56 machine gunners of the Colt unit. These guys...
The Colt unit.
Yes! Or Colt's unit, as in with an apostrophe and an S would be a better translation. But it was literally called the Colts. As in the Colt, like the firearms manufacturer.
Yeah, it's too perfect.
I'm not done. 10 machine gunners of the Maxim unit, as in the Maxim machine gun.
These guys are just taking their names off of the first English word that they see written on the
No,
guns,
but it's about what the machine guns they stole that way was called. And I'm gonna need my trusty Google Translator for this because I cannot remember the translation. Oh, 1 platoon of infantry, 1 platoon of like engineers, 1 platoon of what you might call like diggers, like entrenchment specialists.
Yeah, these are sappers, engineers.
Yeah, sappers, engineers.
Is probably better. Is probably the
176 millimeter cannon. They had
Why?
a 76 millimeter cannon on this armored train.
Why?
Why not?
It gets better, and then they had the 2 armored cars of the Armstrong Whitworth type, Armstrong Whitworth Fiat, and Austin.
I'm so stunned by the 76 that they have on there. That's a big fucking gun.
They just have a 76 millimeter between the 2 flatbeds with the armored cars on top.
Yeah, that's not stealthy at all. You're going to...
I think we have abandoned the concept of stealth when you realize there was probably like 4 platoons of men just manning this shit.
Well, remember, they're also just showing up inside of a village. That gun is merely to hit anyone who steps outside of the village.
Yeah, just fuck around and find out.
Yeah, because you can't use that thing on your position, because then you have no position.
Like, it's ridiculous. It's like the machine... also, the machine gunners were absolutely baller. They had like one of those personnel carriages. Like people carriage. And what they did was cut holes in the top. And they stood on like boxes. In like each hole, there were several holes. One man to one side, the other to the other. And what I'm trying to say is, they had broadside Maxim machine guns.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Did they just make murder holes on like...
No, not murder holes. They literally had the fucking machine guns on top of the car.
Oh, they literally broadsided this thing.
They literally motherfucking broadsided. It's like, insane levels of garbage. It's like orc tech. You know, just like all of it.
Yeah, they don't
All
care
of
if
it.
you can see them coming at this point.
Now,
Because they're
what
going
might...
to win, usually.
Yeah, it's like 4 platoons of people inside of there. Now, we're gonna get to something even more ridiculous. We're gonna get into some really fucking ridiculous territory. You might realize that leaving through Vladivostok means that you're gonna need ships.
Yeah.
And what they did was buy a ship. Their first ship that they bought. Now, this is gonna get some explanations. How do you think these people were paid?
They were paid?
Oh, it's World War One. They weren't paid.
No, they were paid.
Were they paid in beer rations?
No. it's gonna be a lot more ridiculous. It's gonna be a lot more ridiculous. You're
Were they paid in
completely
bullets?
wrong. No.
Were they paid in
Do they get paid in
bullets?
actual currency?
They got paid in actual currency.
Was this sent to
Bullshit.
them by like
Bullshit.
a
I
fucking
call
exile
bullshit.
government or something?
Gunny, how much do you know about the White Army?
More than the average person.
Okay,
quite a
so
bit, actually.
So the White Army, for those people that have no idea, were the counter-fighters to the communist revolution. Because as commies would like to make it out, their revolution wasn't as clean as they like to make it out. It was quite
there was a
messy.
whole bunch of these
It was quite messy.
aristocrats
Like,
just running around.
even so far as to say that it was a fucking clusterfuck. And what the Czechs did was... Now, this is where it gets juicy. They almost saved the Tsar, like the Nicholas and his family.
Wait,
They were off by like... They were off by 1 day. He was held in like a village, and he was executed the previous day. They almost rescued him.
They just show up
Almost.
at the village.
They
like,
just
a
show
day
up at the
after.
village as a coincidence. They almost saved him.
All right, so the plan so far, right, is
Right.
to jump on the Trans-Siberian and then
Right.
head to Vladivostok.
Which is on the other side of Russia, and bear in mind these are slow-ass trains, so
Yeah,
this is gonna
like
take months.
This is
This is gonna take months to get there.
near Alaska. This is the journey to the east.
It's like I'm emphasizing this is the biggest road trip in history of man, maybe like even bigger than Genghis Khan's hordes, because this is literally a road trip.
Yeah, let's like just for just for clarity's sake, just in case no one who is listening, takes any interest in European history, we are going from essentially, let's just say,
like
for
Europe,
Moscow, Kiev, we are going all the way east to basically
the end of the world.
Russia, and then
To the end
south
of the world.
to the Sea of Japan, the South China Sea.
Now, the
That
great
is where we're
thing
going.
is, the Legionnaires were also supporting the White Army. They were quite fervently anti-communist.
Well, yeah, you have to head through their territory anyway.
Except the 150 that left them.
I think this is like I've heard this mentioned, another great podcast you should guys listen to is Lions Led by Donkeys.
Yeah,
And I've heard it mentioned as the theory of fuck that guy.
Yeah, the eternal unifying theory of fuck that guy.
Yeah, so the Czechs helped the White Army fight the communists. Now, do you know what was the White Army in possession of that was extremely valuable and could pay, at this point, 3 divisions of men?
No, actually.
You really don't.
The Russian National Gold Treasure.
Oh, God.
And the
They
Czechs,
took the gold as well.
they took the gold as well.
I was actually unaware that they had the Russian treasure
Now,
in their hands at the time.
it's more so that they didn't steal it. It's more so that they were given it to be allowed to pay their men somehow, and as sort of a thank you for helping, the White Army fight the communists. This
Well, no,
still, this
I
still
mean the
amounted to
White
a
Army
lot of
had it.
fucking gold.
Yeah, I was
Now,
actually unaware that the White Army had
this amounted
taken
to
the
so
treasure.
much gold that it managed to start the economy of the new Czech Republic, of the Czechoslovakian Republic at that time. It
This is
funded
getting
the National Bank.
of Czechoslovakia at the time. Which
Yeah,
is
the First
insanity.
Republic.
This is essentially a mercenary state at this point.
Yes! It gets better, because not only did this money or this gold provide to fund the National Bank, it paid 3 divisions of men. It paid for their, pay. It paid for their food. It paid for their expenses. It paid for several transportation vessels by which they got home. And I'm going to shortly talk about this, because this was sort of Czech history has a tendency, or like a history of fundraisers. Yeah? Like the Czech National Theater had a big fundraiser. They had a big lottery. The people bought tickets out of national fervor, and they supported it as much as they could. Then it burned down, so they did it again. What the Czechs did to get home, they bought a Japanese ship.
Yeah, I was about to ask
Historically,
you. Let me ask you, right?
historically, the first ship that sailed the Czechoslovakian flag. This means that we are a naval power.
Yeah.
Now
So
it
let me
gets
just
better.
ask you. It's 1918. What takes a couple years
It's been
to make
bought.
are very large ships, and you're
Now
in
this was
Vladivostok, which
this
is
was bought
yeah.
under the effort of the provisional government, which now bear in mind this cloud of people isn't moving through the Trans-Siberian Magistral at the same time.
Yeah,
They're
no,
moving in groups. So at one point, people, it's sort of a steady flow through the Magistral. That means they took over the villages and they built infrastructure. They built banks. There was a bank established. It was the first Czech Legionary Bank or something like that. And they essentially built up infrastructure in these podunk towns in the middle of nowhere, Siberia, just because they were staying there for a few months.
yeah, it's just like the Russo-Japanese
Now,
War is far off. You know, it's not far off in the past, but it's far enough in the past that you can't rebuild your Eastern Navy that well. So these guys buy a Japanese ship,
it
and
gets
you're a
better.
landlocked country.
Yes.
Let's repeat that fact for anyone who doesn't know. The Czech Republic and the Czechoslovakia at the time is a landlocked fucking nation,
It
and
gets
you guys are now
better.
a naval power.
It gets better. Said boat was not insured because there wasn't any insurance company that would be, going
Did they start their
to.
insurance firm?
No, because they weren't sure that it was a good idea to fund the first Czechoslovakian boat and the first Czechoslovakian crew. It was a big risk. So the boat rode uninsured.
Oh,
Now,
this
it
is not
gets
as dumb as I
better.
thought it'd be.
It was bought in a port on the island of Honshu. Now, do you know what the island was called?
The island of Honshu.
No, the island of Honshu, the port. What was the name of the port? And Hab, I can hear you snickering.
Is it MacArthur? Is it Port MacArthur?
No,
No, it's not Port MacArthur.
it's literally called Kobe. Kobe. Fucking,
Wait.
it's
This
literally
is
called.
Port Kobe.
Yes! And
What
the ship was called Taikai Maru. It was renamed the Legion, and the money to fund this enterprise was raised up by the soldiers of the Legion that somehow were in Japan.
Yeah, it's like these guys are no longer in Russia. These guys are well and truly firmly in Japan.
This is some Metal Gear Solid 5 shit. This is like
How
Outer
the
Heaven
fuck did
tier.
they get there?
The Trans-Siberian Magistral.
Yeah, I know.
It
But
goes
it's like,
all the way to Japan.
well, you have to travel through Port MacArthur to get to Port Kobe.
Yes.
Port MacArthur is essentially a flaming hole in the ground still.
Yes.
That's been 6 years. It's built up by now, but
Now, the boat Legion was their Legion was one of the suggested names. Now, we're gonna get into those suggested names. One was Arrow or Sheep in Czech, Siberia or Sibiriak. And this is where we're gonna try and cap off the episode with our most ridiculous piece of history, because the Czech Republic not only is a naval power, it is an undefeated naval power.
oh no. They got into a fight with the Russian Navy.
Now, do you know what is the Lake Baikal?
Yeah.
Hab, could you tell our American listeners what is
Okay,
Lake
so-
Baikal?
For those of you who are not interested in geography in any way, shape, or whatsoever, okay, first of all, good for you. Second of all, Lake Baikal is one of the deepest, if not the deepest lakes in the world.
It's also really fucking big.
It's very
it's
big as a
massive
lake.
It's so big you can, I think, see it from space.
Technically.
Like, it's not as big.
If I'm not mistaken,
on me on this.
the only larger lake is the Caspian
Are the
Sea,
Great
because
Lake.
that technically does not count as a sea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If you pull up a map and you know that giant piece of water in the middle of Russia, right above Mongolia, that is a singular lake, and that is Lake Baikal.
I think you can see it in the video, actually, because
Maybe
it's on the map.
It's possible
probably.
he's just painting over it.
I mean,
right
he is
about
covering
now.
it with like the stick a little bit, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
right
it's
there.
like it's right there. Now, we might know that Lake Baikal is really big and it's really deep and it's really fucking scary if you're into like tentacle porn or Lovecraft. But
Listen, you have
You do not have the right to bring
have
up
a
tentacle
bureaucrat,
porn in the middle
martial
of our
artist,
World War I
firearms
podcast.
trainer that's into history and geography on your podcast, and now you're just adding tentacle porn. I think you lost everyone.
That's my job.
yeah, you're also a weeaboo, Gunny.
That is true, but so are you.
I'm not a terrible weeaboo. I'm a cultured weeaboo. Now, before
That's
we
not a
get
thing.
into infighting, we're gonna get into the battle on Lake Baikal. Now, this is gonna require some background. The Legionary steamboat. So not only did they steal armored trains, they stole steamboats.
As you do.
They stole a fucking steamboat. Now,
As you do.
the Czech legionary steamboat named Sibiriak was gotten famous by being the victor of the only naval battle in Czech history, period, and being the victor of it. Now, the background
Again.
to this battle was the legionnaires, the Czechoslovakian legionnaires, under the lead of certain, and I'm gonna need to translate this again because
Can
I
you
have no idea
translate
how's
that?
the rank called in
Oh, the
English.
rank, okay.
Certain Colonel Gaida. He's a Gaida. Gajdy. Now, they were fighting for the mountain passes around Lake Baikal. These mountain passes were really well defended, and Gaida was worried that Baikal was completely controlled by boats of the Red Army, which, made the Czech position or the Czech rear units position really tenuous. Now, the Czechoslovakian legionnaires, during the fights for Baikal's many ports, have gotten into control 3 steamboats: Sibiriak, Buryat, and Fedosia. Now, do you know anything about steamboats? Anything that might be relevant to the fact that we are not talking about a warship.
Yeah, this is essentially maybe an Ironsides if you're lucky.
From the picture in the thumbnail next to the killer fish is a picture
This is not an
of
Ironside.
the icebreaker Baikal.
You're saying
this is
you're
not
saying
an
killer
Ironside.
fish as a joke. I think it might actually be very likely that Lake Baikal had some killer fish at the time.
I still believe it's a fucking Baikal has some killer fish or just the Spetsnaz.
Baikal is not
there.
even a lake. It's just the entrance to the void.
For
Yeah,
anyone
it's
who's
just
confused, I'd like to point you to this steamboat. Now, this is not a steamboat used for war.
It's a steamboat.
This is essentially a cruise liner fishing trolley type of boat. This is a icebreaker that trolls a lake that has now been retrofit by a mercenary army.
No. It gets so much worse.
I think saying retrofit would be a bit too kind.
I wouldn't call it a retrofit.
The machine gun on this thing is a retrofit.
I wouldn't call it a retrofit. I would call it a ghetto fit.
A pistol on this thing is a retrofit.
Would you guess what did they put onto these 3
Did they put the 76 on it?
They put 4 howitzers on it.
Oh, fucking Christ.
Now, this disposition of forces during the battle looked as such. On the Czechoslovakian sides, you had Madman himself, Radola Gaida, the colonel, and his 2 steamboats, armed with 4 howitzers. Now, on the enemy side, you had the boats Angara, Baikal, the port defense, and an armored train. By all accounts, this disposition of forces is not equal. Right?
Also, one little really
the
small
train,
thing
didn't they?
that I also
They
gotta
stole
add.
the 3rd armored train.
The
It
Red Army
gets
vessel, the one that's
better.
called Baikal, that's a fucking icebreaker.
We mentioned
these
this,
are icebreaker boats.
Gunny, it gets better. Now, can you all tell me what complicates logistical chains that Russia has in an abundant supply, and it's not winter?
Oh, what complicates logistical chains in Russia? Siberia?
Yeah.
And that's not winter.
Alcohol.
Yeah. No.
Well,
More
the
alcohol.
fact that, there's fucking nothing there and you basically have to drag everything in. Also, there's an enemy armored train just sitting on your railway that you can't pass.
These are all
Also, the
valid answers.
On the lake between Mongolia and Russia, is now contested area.
Contested by one madman with 2 steamboats, several
high caliber artillery pieces
on top. Now, it gets better because I think, let me confirm this, but no, it was just 2 steamboats. I thought they had like a armored escort, like small boats, but no. What complicates supply chains, like even civilian chains at the best of times in Russia, is the fact that Russia is really fucking big.
Oh yeah, yeah, and Russia is massive.
And take into consideration that this is a port town in podunk middle of buttfuck nowhere.
Yeah,
Off the
dead center of.
Trans-Siberian Magistral. Off
To
of
put it in
it.
perspective, how much nothing is in this area for anyone who doesn't know geography and doesn't really give a shit. You are in northern Mongolia, southern Russia. There
It's
is
like
not
there
even
is
grass really
nothing.
grows here.
There's
Not even grass grows
nothing.
here.
Like back in the Napoleonic Wars, Napoleon's soldier that trudged through a similar land on their way to Moscow and on their way back in the middle of winter after the Russians burned down Moscow in the most spiteful badass move of history. They essentially were eating each other's corpses and the fucking bark off of trees, and there's like shoelaces. Like there is nothing there. Nothing.
And this is in Moscow during the winter. You are firmly in southern Siberia.
Civilization. You are firmly in whatever passes for civilization out there. But what this was a podunk town, middle of nowhere, butt fuck anywhere, off of the Trans-Siberian Magistrate. Like, there is nothing there besides Lake Baikal. Now, on said lake, now, were 2 boats armed with 4 howitzers. And as it so often happens with bodies of water, they found that the port, around 8 kilometers before it, was covered in a thick fog.
Did they just sneak these 2 ice trawlers up and
It gets better.
fire on the town?
It gets better. Now, the fog at around 8 kilometers distance away from the port had dispersed. And the Russians, as one does, after living in middle of Siberia, in the middle of nowhere, but fuck podunk country, had thought that these were resupply vessels.
Yeah, because, there's no way that an enemy army is going to go this far deep into Siberia for no goddamn reason other than resupply. That's probably the only thing that passes through there.
Now, it wasn't resupply.
Yeah, as
it
we
was
know,
2 steamboats with 4 howitzers on it.
Yeah. 2 steamboats filled with crazy Czechs and 4 howitzers.
What you people might not realize, these things probably don't even have any iron on them besides the fucking boilers. These are probably made out of wood.
Yeah, like I said, these are not iron-sided.
There's no bracing. This is like, imagine just like a fucking, like a rowboat, but you put a mortar on it.
Yeah, again, if anyone is familiar with mid-1800s naval history, these are not iron-sided boats that you see during the middle of the American Civil War or anything like that. These are civilian ships made out of wood, probably with a reinforced bow.
You're giving them too much credit. You're giving them too much credit. Siberiac was confirmed to be an icebreaker, and Siberiac was on the Red Army's side. Or no, Baikal. Siberiac was Czech. Baikal was icebreaker.
It has a reinforced front because it's an icebreaker, and that's about it.
Now, what this fog allowed was it allowed the Czech Legionaries, or right now the Czech naval forces, to go up to around 4 kilometers away from port. Then,
are these technically the first Czech Marines as well?
They did not disembark their vessel.
No, this is just Czech Navy. Well, no, these are army forces that went onto a ship. These are technically still Marines.
Oh my god! The Czech Marines, with their naval technicals, Oh my god, that is an angle I did not think of.
The
You're
undefeated
welcome.
Czech Marines.
Czech Marines with technicals.
Who
I
were
just
out
see
to
like Czech.
fucking ashes.
Ura the motherfucking beer.
Oh god.
I need a moment.
This is essentially the Czech version of Blackbeard.
No, Blackbeard didn't have two steamboats armed with 4 artillery
Blackbeard was
pieces.
more
Blackbeard
heavily
also
armed.
died.
Yeah, well,
Now-
Blackbeard was also more heavily armed than this.
He probably was.
Oh.
Probably
It gets better.
was.
At 4 kilometers distance, the Russians realized their mistake. The icebreaker Baikal that was currently moored in port wanted to start fire. Now, this was probably an actually armed ship, not just a ship with a fucking, it wasn't just a fucking ship with like a machine gun tripod on top of it. It was
Well,
probably
there's a better
built
question. Yeah, there's a better question, right?
with intent.
This is
Right.
a lake deep in the middle of, well, Siberia, and the
Right.
only nations around it are, well, let's just go through it. Let's just
Russia?
look. Lake Baikal, literally only Mongolia,
Right.
and that's about it. So these guys are probably, the only reason there would be an armored ship out here is, well, they're
Hunt
expecting
Cthulhu.
China to run through Mongolia and start putting naval forces in there. There is no reason
Oh
why
my
a
God.
military ship should be in that port. If you
Now,
haven't,
this is in year
gone-
1918.
yeah, this should, yeah. If it hasn't dawned on you yet, why the fuck is there an armed ship in Lake Baikal?
This is in August of 1918. Now, my sources say that Baikal, the icebreaker we keep mentioning, wanted to fire first. What I propose is that the Russians realized their mistake when Baikal sank into the motherfucking port. Because
Did anyone had a telescope? Because you said that the fog
Baikal-
was 8
8
kilometers out.
yes,
It had dissipated, so they can still make out a ship.
they
Because it's
got
4
in
kilometers away.
around 4 kilometers from the port. And
So
in
they
port,
can very clearly see that this civilian steamer has
2
two
howitzers.
howitzers on it. And they didn't think anything was strange up until they hear a big boom
And
and watch their their ship.
our armed icebreaker Baikal sink to the fucking bottom of the port. Now, both ships that on the Czech side began firing, both on Baikal and as well as the port. Now, Baikal
as you do.
was sunk with one single accurate shot from the, like, it. Oh my god, they did not use one of these.
Did they throw a grenade onto this? At this
From
point,
a
I'm willing to believe that.
tugboat! From a tugboat! They sunk the steamer the steamer Baikal from one accurate single shot from a fucking tugboat.
Oh boy.
Again, this steamer is probably only armed and armored for like some peasant uprising. There's literally no
yeah, the only way
hostile
that
nations
Icebreaker
next to
has any
Lake
armor is
Baikal.
on the front to, break
Yeah,
ice.
the only armor it has is the front. It's probably made for like some peasant uprising. There's no reason
It was
why you
probably
have
made
an
by
armed
very
boat
unhappy
here.
workers somewhere around Vladivostok.
Yeah,
And then the
it's-
workers were
no.
very quickly shot, of course.
So, again, barely structured bullshit going by the name. Remember how you said these guys were in Port Kobe?
Right.
Do you know where Port Kobe is?
Do they play basketball there?
No.
It's in Japan. It's on an
It's
island.
in Japan. But knowing how Russia and Japan are situated, do you think Port Kobe is on the west side facing Russia or on the east side far as fuck away?
I'm thinking the most ridiculous option is probably the east side, facing as much away from Russia as humanly possible.
Do you think it's on the northeast side or do you think it's on the southeast side?
Southeast.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
the
Honshu is
furthest
on the
away.
south. Yeah.
Gentlemen, I point you to Port Kobe.
Oh my god, it's in a fucking oh my god, it's
in a bay.
It's in a bay as deep as you can be in the middle of fucking nowhere in Japan.
It is on the other side of Japan, closer to Korea than it is to Russia. These
my
guys
god.
took this train all the way to Port MacArthur, circumvented Japan. They didn't even go to Sapporo. They circumvented another port to the other side of fucking Japan to cross half the world to get to a landlocked nation.
Boat.
Via a boat to get to a landlocked nation.
Oh my fucking god.
This is the plan.
This is the most hacked together plan I have ever seen.
And it fucking worked.
The worst part is, it worked.
Now, back to the Battle of Lake Baikal. The icebreaker Baikal was sunk. The port was in flames. And the local train station was in chaos.
And everyone else is confused.
Because why the fuck are these ships firing at us? Why did they sink one of our boats? Why is there hell coming down from this fucking tugboat with like a fucking 70mm artillery piece on it? How did
enemies get this deep?
Yeah.
What is life?
What are these people? Now, along half an hour of shelling later.
Those are rookie numbers. This is in the middle of World War I still.
This is also bear in mind that this is like 4 artillery pieces on 2 rickety ass steamboats.
What month of 1918 was this battle?
August.
So the war is still going on.
Yep.
The war still has not ended yet. There's at least.
Yep.
Oof. It's August. There's at least 1 to 3 months left.
Yep.
Yeah, the war ended with the armistice on the 11th of November, so more or less 3 4 months. Yeah.
Now, what happened was, after half an hour of shelling, an armored train arrived, from which were guns removed, which began fire against the Czechoslovakian ships. But because the Czechoslovakian Marines finished their main task, they just left. And on their way back, now listen to this, on their way back, they met another enemy ship, icebreaker Angara, which straight up ran away. And even still,
it's a fucking civilian icebreaker.
Still, it was a few days later, it was stolen and taken over by Legionary Marines.
Of course. I love that you have to call them Marines now. You have to call them Marines.
I have to call them Marines. Now, the losses. On the Czechoslovakian side, we have lost 19 brothers.
I think you mean Marines.
19 brother Marines.
The brother Marines.
Oh god, this
How
is
many
I cannot wait for Hulk
shit.
Hogan.
How many were lost with the Russian army?
Now, it doesn't say people, it only mentions material losses. But the icebreaker Baikal was sunk, the port was in flames, and the train station very much the same, in flames.
You can assume there were
So
probably at least a couple
over
dozen
2 to 1
losses.
casualties.
I
This is
would
well
probably
over 2 to 1
say,
casualties.
yeah, I would probably say.
Maybe
Now,
10 to 1.
Now, the funny thing is, this national upheaval, this massive road trip, ended with the return to home. And it was called an evacuation. Now, there was a few nations that helped, namely the USA, Great Britain, Czechoslovakian Republic, and the Central
obviously.
Committee, Japan.
And Japan,
yeah.
obviously.
Now, it was 2 Japanese boats and 1 Russian boat. Now, bear in mind at that point, the war was truly ended and the revolution was also ended.
The only Eastern Russian boat.
Yeah, it was like the last boat that left Baikal with the last Legionaries was the American boat Heffron.
Oh.
Now,
please tell me that these guys, these Czechoslovakian legionaries, got a good nickname out of this.
Now, it was called the Heffron, literally the same as the alcohol.
Yeah.
On the 2nd of September 1920. Now, this was many boats. The Allies themselves have contributed 21 boats to this evacuation, some of which did several round trips.
This is 2 years after? You said 1920.
2nd of September 1920.
So this is nearly 2 years after the war has ended. The last bits of Czechoslovakians in Russia and Japan are being evacuated. Finally.
Yes. Yes. Now, the USA contributed, and it was dealt with them that they would contribute 50% of the evacuation, and they did 53% of the evacuation. Now, Hab, open your calculator.
Okay. It's open.
The United States of America managed to transport 36,026 people.
One moment. Oh wow, this calculator is not working. Let me use the Windows one. Okay.
Now, once again, just for posterity, the Americans were supposed to contribute 50% of the evacuation. They ended up contributing 53%, and they transported 36,026 people. Do you have that written down in the calculator?
Okay, 36,026 people.
The Great Britain was supposed to contribute 25% of the evacuation. They contributed 25% of the evacuation. And it ended up to be 16,956 people. The Czechoslovakian Republic and its other allies. Now, bear in mind, we are a naval power.
Yeah, you are a landlocked nation who has now found itself to be a naval power.
We have ended up transporting 14,921 people. Yeah. Which was around 22% of the evacuee.
Wait,
And
13,000 or 14,000?
14.
Okay.
Which is 2,000 less than Great Britain did.
You know, the premier, like, marine power.
The premier marine power was almost beaten out by a bunch of people who have never been to sea. Now, and the Central Commission, which was Japan, Russian, and Chinese boats, was 9,683 people. Now, Hab, how many people is this in total for the entire evacuation?
77,586.
How many people did we start with?
We started with 3 divisions of people.
So let's just, for everyone, how big is a division?
Now, I have no idea.
That's what we're going to do.
That's what I'm going to have to Google now because I did not think of this gag.
Oh boy.
All right. Now, here's the thing, right? It's about 6,000 and 25,000 soldiers.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna assume we're
What?
on the
How
lower
many?
end.
How many people did they evacuate again?
77,500.
We gained at. If we take the most liberal estimate that it was 25,000 people per division, we gained 2,000 people.
We have just generated 2,000 people somewhere. Did you go to a cloning facility while you were there or something?
No, I know why this is. Because, remember, this was essentially spanning the length of the entire fucking war. Not only were the Legionaries fighting the Russians, they were also fighting the Austro-Hungarians from the beginning of the war. From 1916 till 1920, and these calculations not only included the able-bodied soldiers of the Czechoslovakian Legion, they include their wives, they include their kids. They include people that just sort of tagged along, because these Czechs looked like good people.
That still doesn't contribute to, like, let's just say, half of the most liberal estimate, 75,000, were soldiers. The other half were their families, wives, girlfriends, what have you. There's about 2,000, including the losses that they would have taken from these skirmishes with the Red Army, with whatever stragglers of whatever army that's trying to catch up to them. There's still about 2,000 people, not including losses, that just showed up.
Yes. I mean, are you surprised? Would you rather live in communist Siberia or go on the biggest and coolest fucking road trip of human history?
Do you want
For
to go
listening
on the Trans-Siberian
that needs a quick
tour?
summary, because we are so heavily off the deep end. These Czech soldiers, in 2 years, became a mercenary army that kick-started their economy. Became a naval force in a landlocked nation, with the first Marines becoming undefeated. Traveled from the edge of Russia to the other side of Japan and nearly circumvented the globe.
Now it gets better, because I didn't tell you.
The premier naval power of the 20th century in civilian transport and evacuation.
Now, it gets better, because all of those boats didn't take the same route. Some went through more sensible routes, like following the coast or going around Japan or anywhere else. Some legionnaires went through America, through the Panama Strait, through Panama. We had Czechs in Panama on military, or essentially commandeered civilian ships. We had military personnel in Panama that probably outnumbered the local American garrison going through at one point. Now, it gets better. It gets better.
Are there people in Panama of Czechoslovakian descent?
Some Czechoslovakians opted to disembark in America and brave the cross-country trail and move from the port on the other side and go transatlantic to Europe. The funny thing is, there's a sizable Czech diaspora in America.
In Panama or in America?
In North America.
Okay, so this is not Hispanics who look Czech.
No, this is just like people deciding, okay, I'm traveling home, but hey, it's been so long, my family's probably dead and my town is in ruins. Texas sounds nice. I guess I'm gonna plant corn and fuck cows.
No, that's Idaho.
Now, Czechs not only did fight in Russia, but the Czechoslovakian legions fought in France, which everybody had a French Foreign Legion at one point. They also fought in Italy. Now, in the Italian army, in the Serbian army.
Yeah. Where it begins, so must it end.
Now, the funny thing is, all of these were volunteering forces.
Yeah, these guys were not paid.
These guys were volunteers, and they were probably given what was given to the regular soldiers, which was probably about nothing.
Yeah, maybe.
They were given sleep
and that's
for
still nothing.
dinner.
They paid to be there.
Right. And the funny thing is, the nation was young after the Czechoslovakian legions returned, and straight away, they started making trouble. Now, this is where our story gets a bit sad, because the Legionaries sort of... It's a great patriotic effort, for sure, and it's still jerked off today. It's like American War of Independence. It's about as much jerked off as it is out here, like Legionaries. And it gets a bit sad because the Legionaries were anti-communist before it was cool. You know, they did military interventionism before it was cool. And
here they are in like the burgeoning USSR. It's just started. The USSR hasn't started yet, because it does start pretty much at the end of World War II with all the gains that they get. But you have, a destroyed country, and of course, you have the broken empires. So I'm only guessing that they're coming back to Czechoslovakia with a pretty sizable communist, sympathy.
The Czechoslovakian legionnaires were actually, believe it or not, anti-commie most of the time.
Yeah, it's just
now they were anti-communist to a similar degree, so big that some of them turned into Nazis, and some of them became anti-Semites. Now, communism in Europe, it was a big thing, especially after the war. We were a free country. We were a bastion of democracy. Communist and socialist policies were a big thing out here back then, as Hand can confirm, I think.
Kind of. Depends which policies you mention.
Like, overall, the Communist Party or the Czechoslovakian Socialist Party.
The communists weren't exactly, liked. They weren't always particularly strong, and not like even during the 40s, right after World War II. They did get a considerable surge of support then, but if they didn't attempt the coup in 1948, chances are they'd probably just fade into obscurity.
Now, the funny thing is, the Czechoslovakian legions were recognized as a formal military force under the then non-existent Czech nation, which was thanks to the Czechoslovakian legion's value is bigger than it might be than we might think, because they were considerably helped to the victory of Allies in World War One. And I hope I'm not. No, it was the tripart. Let me just switch to English. Yeah, it was the triple entente.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it was the Entente. Yeah, it was the Entente. They helped considerably to the victory of the Tri-Entente. And from a military point of view, it was a certain French general called Milan Rastislav Stefanik, which, as you might hear, is not a French name.
Yeah,
it's not a French name.
Not French. I wonder where he's from.
He's Czech, he's Slovakian, and at that point it doesn't matter. But he was one of the founding fathers of the Czech Republic. and he managed to actively organize the founding of the Czechoslovakian legions, namely in Italy and in Russia, and especially on the French part of the line, because quite obviously, he also managed to sow the support for the Czechoslovakian idea between the American Slovakians. He first intended, now listen to this, he first intended to fund the Czechoslovakian army from Czechs and Slovakians already living in America.
Is he pulling essentially what Israel had done and is currently still doing?
Now, there's a
Try
big
to
difference
recollect the
between...
diaspora and bring them back
Yes.
home,
Yes.
and also try to fund an trying to put a compulsory army to protect the
Yes.
burgeoning nation. Is that essentially what he
Yes.
is doing?
With the difference that Israel does not have as much of a historical sort of standing for existence as the Czech nation does. And I do not mean this anti-Semitically. Like, the Czech nation was an independent kingdom. It was an independent county with like a count at the head. It has a fierce history of independence and being a recognized sovereign nation that
Israel
at
has
one
always
point
been a contested
birthed an emperor. Israel was always
land.
contested land. This isn't even like political. This is like just historical,
Yeah. It's always been under different powers of different tribes. The Israelites held it. Other kingdoms held it. Egypt held it, and by extension, the Romans held it. It's been held by a lot of contested areas. Czechoslovakia is a large nation that birthed an emperor and has been its own thing for hundreds of years.
Yeah, not even hundreds of years. We're talking about thousands of years. And the thing is that at one point we were a sovereign nation before the Habsburg monarchy took us over as a territory. Whereas Israel does not have as much of an independent history over there. Now, in Czechoslovakian sort of circles was the Legionnaires' sort of legacy was and is still taken very seriously. This is like the cult of veterancy in America. From what I see from the outside, it's like where veterans are taken as the highest part of, sort of like the venerated sacrifice on the altar of preserving your nation's ideals and safeties and freedoms. Except in this case, it was actually preserving the nation and not fucking dying for an oil company.
Hey, are you saying that American veterans have historically been beaten down and not given their fair shake despite the sacrifices that they make for our nation? Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm trying to say that modern American veterans have been dying for the last 25 years in a sandpit that even the Russians couldn't conquer. And they've been dying for an oil company, and so that the Iraqis can wear skirts.
Are you saying that America doesn't like its veterans?
I am saying that American government does not indeed like its veterans. However, over here, the Czech government of the time really liked its veterans. The future president, Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, and the president at the time was a big part of the legionary movement. He also, was managed to make sure that these people get veteran benefits. And we're not talking about like small things like in America. These people, they got retirement, they got pensions, they got their widows got pensions. The legionaries had gotten preferential treatment when they were looking for work in state service, and they really managed to essentially put this nation into existence.
Yeah, this nation, the government did step up, and its veterans basically jump-started a new nation.
Right. And funny thing to mention is that when you were entering service in the Austro-Hungarian military, and I'm not sure how it works when you enter military service now or when you enter military service in the US, but you swore before Kaiser and God, right?
In U.S. military service, you don't.
You swear to
But
the
you do.
Constitution,
Yes,
or
you swear to the government and the laws that you uphold.
yeah. This was back when religion was still a mighty thing,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
but
that you still swear to God as well in that
the
thing.
Catholic Church, because take it from this point of view, from the point of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, these guys were arch traitors. Not only did they desert from their military, not only are they fighting them, they're also making a separatist movement in their territory. These guys were arch traitors. Now, it went so far as that the Catholic Church went out with a statement that legionnaires did not go against their oath that they swore to the Hungarians or the Austro-Hungarian Empire, because their fealty and oath was forced, and forced oaths have no weight. So their actions against the communists, against the Austro-Hungarian Empire, have been blessed by God. Like, you cannot get cooler than this shit. But there was some criticism, some very much warranted criticism of the legions. For example, the fact that they, stopped fighting the Bolsheviks. That they didn't wipe them out with the help of the White Army.
This is a Czech road trip with samurai blessed by God.
Yes!
A Czech road trip with Marines, samurai, and blessed by God.
And not only that, it includes armor trains.
Yeah, you cannot tell me that in stopping off in Japan and stopping off in Panama, we probably have a small Czech diaspora, people of Czech heritage in Japan. Again, their military service in Japan
that
probably did stop off for a while.
Certain things about today's politics.
Technically, we do have Czech samurai.
No, Gunny, you have given me a bug into my head because do you think that it's possible that slant-eyed motherfucker, that xenophobic cocksucker who's leading SPD, like Okamura, the fucking ban man. Now, this is full of inside jokes. Nobody's gonna understand this outside of the US. Do you think that history has went full circle and that he has Czech Japanese heritage, and his parents went back into the Czech Republic, the land of their forefathers?
I don't want to answer that. I am too afraid to
answer. Because this is one of the most racist politicians we have in our country. It's like he's leading a right-wing group that's against immigration, against the European Union, against NATO, against everything essentially.
Against Islam, especially.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. They're now I'm gonna mention this briefly because it's a really funny thing. But one of their fanatical followers did a false flag attack against the train tracks, or against the train network, by cutting down trees.
Like I said before, as it ends, so must it begin.
Full circle. Full circle. Oh God.
Jormungandr is eating his tail. We are so full circle.
Oh, all that's happened before will happen again.
He is swallowing his tail. The Ouroboros is definitely
Now, the Ouroboros is not following its tail at this point. Its tail
It's
is
eating
so far up its mouth that he's scratching his head with his fucking teeth.
Yeah, it is definitely just a singularity.
Like, at this point, oh my god. Yeah, but one of the main criticisms of the Legion was that they didn't kill all the commies, and that, they were worried that they were Bolsheviks in disguise. So when the Legionaries were returning to Canada in trains, they were forbidden from leaving the train stations.
Yep, there's no happy end here. There's a bittersweet end because,
Yeah, and
as we
the
know, there's another war.
legionaries defended
Yeah,
themselves against this criticism by saying that their health and their lives are in a lot worse shape than of like regular soldiers or like the civilians, because they were fighting, some of them, for like 6 years of active service, like active combat service, in like the bloodiest war in like human history on like a modern scale.
yeah.
This is the war that still makes you find unexploded ordnance in forests
Yeah,
in France. This is the same war that has essentially made a no entry zone out of several like places in France along the French line, because there's still so much unexploded ordnance in there. This is the war that funded the rules of war so that nothing so terrible would happen again. And to quote a classic meme, "Want to see me do it fucking again?"
Jesus Christ, that
yeah.
blew my eardrums
Unfortunately,
out.
a certain recruit in World War One survived getting shot.
Now,
Donated all of his money to a family member that was on hard times, and spent his time on the streets of Vienna
was he
getting
also a
anti-Semitic
Now, Gunny, was this
propaganda.
guy also a vegetarian? Did he like dogs and was vehemently against the drugs?
Yes, yes, and
Was he also a
unfortunately,
really
yes.
shitty painter?
Well,
Like,
That's subjective.
that's for
he
another
couldn't.
episode, isn't it?
Fuck you. He couldn't draw anything but landscapes,
Yeah, he even
and
then,
even
like
his
his paints were
landscape
uncanny.
compositions were really mediocre. But one more thing before we end this episode is that legionaries, a lot of the legionaries actually went back into civilian life, because they weren't out there to fight for the Czechoslovakian nation, but they just wanted to go home.
He's like, screw this! I just wanted it to stop.
I just want to go home. Like, a lot of people just left. A lot of the grim thing we're gonna end on, because we can't have like a funny episode always.
Yeah, this podcast is made in Europe, especially it's in the Czech Republic. We
But
can't
it's
end on
weird.
just a happy note.
Yeah, we can't. Is that uh the you might think that since commies didn't like the legionnaires for obvious reasons, the Nazis might have liked them.
Oh no, no.
No, 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 no.
They're Slav. They're Slav.
The Battle of Legionnaires by side of the Russian Bolsheviks at Bakhmut, which was before they sort of went into disparity with each other, and the later set up armistice between both sides, and the giving up of like the fight against the Bolsheviks really helped the Nazis. Joseph Goebbels has managed to has said about the political platform of the democratic Czechoslovakian First Republic as a Jew Bolshevik or Bolshevik Jew ulcer of Europe. After the occupation, legionary murals were destroyed. Many were rebuilt in the years 1945 to 48. In Slovakian, most murals to the legionnaires were also destroyed, and most of those weren't rebuilt. And after the year 1948, the communist regime didn't like the sort of legacy of legionnaires either. So, especially their fight against the Bolsheviks. Yeah. So, in the end, they were sort of, buried by both of these terrible regimes that came in here after the First World War. Same as with like the communists or the Nazis. Both regimes suppressed national history, and both regimes suppressed the. We're joking about this, but these were arguably brave men who went into the middle of nowhere, Siberia, where even grass doesn't grow, and they did some baller shit.
Yeah, they just did some of the most crazy things that you could imagine an army doing.
And they weren't a proper organized army because they didn't have a nation to go under. This was like 70,000 people that were more subscribed to an idea of a nation rather than the physical boundaries of a nation. Now, by 1920, the nation existed, and that is semantics, but the fact is that in the beginning, they were fighting for an idea and an ideal of independence rather than sort of a grounded idea of like imperialism or monarchism, which is funny that the communists didn't pick up on this a lot more than they did.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
so,
with that,
what did you think about the Legionnaires, Gunny?
That is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, insane. Like, and this is like the more tame side of military history, Czech military history. If we're gonna get into the Hussite wars anytime soon, I'm telling you, you're gonna piss yourself.
I have to come to that.
Don't worry, those are even more hilarious.
You heard it, people. In 8 months, we're doing the Hussites.
Yeah, it also took us 8 months to think of a funny new thing to torture our American visitors with, and it is called the Czech word of the day.
I almost forgot the Czech word of the day.
Unfortunately, I will have to ask Tom for this, because I have speech issues regarding the letter R and R.
This is a single word. Yeah. We are, and this is like the last word, and we're gonna end it on Yusa trying to pronounce it. And the word is Řeřicha.
Řeřicha?
Nope.
You're trying. You're trying. That's good. That's effort.
It's
You're getting there. One of the really funny thing about most Americans that try to learn Czech is that outside this word that I also have issues with, they have one other word that is a very massive issue. I think this one is going to be easier for you to pronounce. It's called zmrzlina.
Mezlina?
Kind of.
Zmrzlina.
It translates into ice cream.
Yeah, because the R there is rolled, which is kind of weird. I had it the first time. Zmrzlina.
Yeah, zmrzlina.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. And Řeřicha is watercress. And with a bit of spice and Gunny's face being contorted. I guess this has been barely structured bullshit. I've been Tom. With me is Hab, and with us we were joined by Gunny. Thanks to you for listening, and we'll see you when we see you.
So, 8-9 months.